You can reply back. Yes, we are live, but you can still participate. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Welcome to Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles. My name is Shannon Green, and I'm the director of the CSJ Institute. And I'm here with my colleague, Brittany Plasencia Saldana, the Associate Director of Women's Leadership and Student Involvement. And on behalf of our president, Dr. Ann McElhaney Johnson, Vice President Dr. Jane Lingua, and our entire Mount community, we welcome you to today's webinar, one in a series of gatherings on student leadership in the spirit of our founders, the Sisters of St. Joseph. Many thanks to Martha Malinsky, the Director of the Association of Colleges of Sisters of St. Joseph, and her team for initiating this series with support from the C. Charles Jackson Foundation. We highly value our membership in ACSSJ and take great pride in our shared history and tradition with our sister schools. So welcome to all of our Mount St. Mary's University students who are gathered here today, and welcome to all of you who are joining us online from our sister schools around the country. Mount St. Mary's University is sponsored by the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, Los Angeles province. The Mount was founded in 1925 when our sisters climbed up the Santa Monica Mountains to found a college to serve the daughters of Los Angeles, a mission we continue to this day. We educate more than 2,500 students on 2 vibrant campuses in Los Angeles. Our student population is 90% female, and our diverse student body represents the city of Los Angeles in which we live and serve. Those of you who are joining us virtually should know that the students gathered here this afternoon have just participated in our annual President's Invitation to Serve, volunteering at various sites across our community, such as the LA Regional Food Bank, the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and Alexandria House. You worked hard today, did you not? Yeah, people, are you a little tired? Yes, but gratified. I see a lot of smiles out there. We had well over 100 members of our Mount community serving in the Los Angeles area today, and we thank you all for your commitment to serving the dear neighbor. And we hope that this hands-on experience that you had today will just enhance your reflection and learning this afternoon. So our webinar today is entitled Live Your Why, and it's meant to help student leaders, and really all of us, reflect upon and articulate our purpose in leading a life of service. In our planning for today, it was clear to us that in laying the foundation of living our why, we need look no further than to our own Sisters of St. Joseph. I think we can all agree that our society is in great need of the model of leadership and purposeful service that our sisters offer to us today. Their strength, courage, humility, and resilience shows us how impactful and how joyful a life of service to the dear neighbor can be. I believe part of the secret to their joyful, purposeful lives is their deep knowledge of who they are as Sisters of St. Joseph, called to bring unity of neighbor with neighbor and neighbor with God through the charism of unifying love. But you don't have to take my word for it. So without further delay, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our panel of speakers today, who have been invited to share with you their why, their journeys of serving and finding purpose. And we are so grateful to each sister for being with us today. So I will introduce our sisters. They will take a few minutes each to share their why and be thinking of any questions you may have for them. At the end of their time of sharing, we'll take a few questions. We'll also see if any of our virtual participants have questions for our sisters as well. And after that portion, I'll turn it over to Brittany, who will lead us through the next stage of our process together. So please let me introduce our sisters. I'll start with Sister Inez. Sister Inez Chayes has advanced degrees in liberation theology and creation spirituality, and currently serves at Soledad Enrichment Action Incorporated, organizing and training youth as peacemakers. So let's give Sister Inez a warm welcome. And then Sister Celia Duray, who has spent 14 years living and ministering in Peru. Sister Celia has also served in elementary education, in community leadership, and volunteers teaching English as a second language to immigrants and refugees, and is also a musician. Welcome, Sister Celia. And we also welcome Sister Annette Debs. After working in education and parish life, Sister Annette went to law school and became an attorney, spending nearly 3 decades representing families, immigrants, and the working poor. Sister Annette has also served as an administrative law judge. Welcome, Sister Annette. Sister Inez, would you like to begin?
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
As I reflected on my why, I realized that we start very, very young. Every small decision we make in our lives creates our reality. And so we download, I realize this, we download everything up to age 7 from our families, our culture, our community. It just happened that I had a wonderful family. But I downloaded their belief in God, a God of healing. And so in the culture also, I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I was surrounded by Native Americans and all the cultures. It was very interesting. So downloading that whole, and also the culture of the Native Americans that were very close to us. There are 5 Hogans of Navajo Indians who live near us. And so I would go as a child, I'd run because my best friends were there. And we sit in front of the storyteller. And she would tell us about the God of the sun god, the eagles, and all of that. And I'd go home and I'd tell my mother, I thought there was only this Catholic God. But she was beautiful. And she would say, well, different people learn about God in different ways. And that's beautiful. And so I learned how to connect with other cultures that were not in the same belief that I had. So that helped me later on in life. As I grew, I always had this desire I knew as a child that I was here for something in this world. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was to give something, to do something. And so we moved from Albuquerque to Los Angeles. And I met a group of sisters in my high school. St. Ferdinand's Mission is the high school that I went to. It now is Alameda. But at that period of time, there were these sisters that seemed to like each other. They laughed and joked, and they liked us. And that was not my experience when I was a child with sisters that I grew in elementary school. We survived. But these women were happy and educated and powerful and loved us. And I thought, gee, I've never seen a group of women like that. So little by little, I did not want to be a nun, that's for sure. And one sister came up to me as I was studying, and she said, whispered in my ear, and she said, have you ever thought of being a nun? And I looked at her, and she just smiled and ran away. I thought, oh, well, I was going to say something else. The gangs, you know. I know all the languages. But anyway, I thought, no way. And so during that period of time, I talked to God, and I told God, the God that I knew, to choose other girls. I knew other girls that were great. They were wonderful. They would make good nuns, but not me, please. Not me. I have other plans. And it only grew and grew and grew. God is a persistent lover. And I would go into the back of the church and cry and weep and weep and weep. Say, God, please, not me, not me. And finally, I gave in and thought, if I get married, then I'm there forever. But if I get into the sisters, I can leave if I don't really like it. So I thought, good choice. Guess what? 60 years later, I'm still in. And I love my community. I had the privilege also of going to Peru and living there 22 years. And I was privileged to be in the area, the coastal area, where we were helping very poor people become owners of land. So we had cooperatives, food cooperatives, and so I learned a lot about that. Then I also learned, then we went to the Andes and the Amazon, and I learned a lot. But what helped me, and the greatest gift, is when I push away from God. Then now, as an older person, I realize there's a gift behind that door that I'm closing. Please, not that door. I want that one, but not this one. But as I finally give in and I say, oh, okay, wow, the greatest gift is right behind that door. And one of the things, when I first got to Peru, they had just finished a 3-month in Puerto Rico learning Spanish. And I just wanted to get to my mission. I wanted to get to my wife. I'm going to save Peru. And so as I got there, they said, no, you're going to study 2 weeks in Lima with a priest who wants to connect with all the missionaries going. So there were 5 of us from Canada and from the United States. Oh no, another. But it just happened, I didn't realize at that time, but it happened to be Father Gustavo Gutierrez, who wrote The Theology of Liberation, and he was starting with us to teach us what this was going to be about. So he gathered us, priests and sisters, 5 of us, and said, and what I learned were 4 pillars that now I use with what I do with the kids and with parents. And he said to us, you are not going to be missionaries that destroyed cultures. And I thought, what? We're here to save. We're not here to destroy. In my head. And he said, missionaries have done a lot of harm when they don't know what to do. But you're not going to be one of those. First of all, and the first pillar that I pulled out of what he said was, you do not bring God here. God is here, and he is among the people, and you find God within the people. And then the second pillar that I pulled out of what he said to us was, you don't start where you are, because all of you are from Canada and the United States. We had a lot of education. You're going into the Andes, you're going into the very poor of the poorest. They haven't had a lot of education. So you don't start where you are. You start where they are. Okay, that was becoming deflated. Third pillar, whatever you start, you get the people involved. And they're part of the process. You don't do for them, you do with them. And fourth pillar, then you leave. And it becomes better. So, those 4 pillars I have lived with, and they're my why. Why I worked in South LA, East LA, Boyle Heights, all of these areas. And this is why I go to San Gabriel Mission every Saturday, well, not this Saturday, and work with 40 families, 40 parents. And at night, Friday nights, another parenting group, and all of this. That's my why. But quickly, I'll tell you, I still have I'll tell you a story of how I learned this wisdom from this wonderful man. And if you ever have a chance, read The Theology of Liberation. That's what it is. It is beautiful. And what I learned also was I let go of the God of fear and I embraced the God of love. And in going up to the Andes, I went to a very poor area where they spoke Aymara, and I went with one of our sisters who's Aymara. We went there and I thought, oh my gosh, the poverty. The kids had extended bellies, their hair was falling out, and I thought, oh my, such malnutrition. They were dirty. They had to go to the river far away to get water. And by the time they had buckets of water all the way up to the mountain, and most of the water was gone, splash, splash, splash. And I mean, the poverty was all around. They had no electricity, no water, they had to go far for the water, and malnutrition. So I thought to myself, I know what their problem is. I can see it. It's hitting me in the face. So we sat down with a group of women, mostly women, and the first question, because Gustavo's question was, start where they are. And so I said, what is your biggest problem? What do you think the biggest problem here in this place is? You know what they said? Yes. Food? Food? They said, we don't know how to knit. I thought, knit? I don't know how to knit either. We're in trouble. So, and I kept hearing his voice, start where they are, start where they are. And I said, well, is there anyone here that knows how to knit? No, the lady, but we'll invite her for the next meeting. So the lady came and she taught us how, and we had to take the wool from the llamas. There was no, we didn't go to, buy wool. We had to do it. And they had to bring the water from the rivers and wash it and dye it and all this stuff. I learned how to knit with them. But I thought, oh, we're wasting time. 4 or 5 weeks and we were still working on this. And I thought, oh, gee, we're wasting so much time. And I learned that we were not. I was learning about the village. I was learning about their families. I was learning about the relationships. They were beginning to trust me and I was beginning to trust them. So it was a period of time in which we were dialoguing. And so anyway, it was time for me to come home for a vacation. We had every 3 years. So they gave me the sweater that we had just finished, beautiful sweater. And I put it on, came here to LA, and my good friend, Marilyn Rudy, another sister of St. Joseph, said, what a beautiful sweater. And I told her all about it. She said, I have a friend that has a boutique. Let's go show it to her. And so we went, and I told her the story, and she said, can I buy your sweater? I said, well, I've been wearing it. And she said, no, I'll buy it from you. And I said, I don't know how much to charge. I don't know how much. So she gave me $80. And she said, ask the women to make more sweaters. I know they'll fly off mine. So I went back to Peru, divided the $80 among them. They were so thrilled. By Christmas, that was 4 months later, we had 4 or 5 sweaters. We send them out, and she would always pay us, and we would distribute the money. The people were really excited. They started to buy fruits and vegetables and good food for their kids that they couldn't afford before. Then they called, and then one woman said, hey, we could do these sweaters faster if we had water. So we called the man and the little mayor, and they got involved, and they started to dig ditches. And we finally got water from the river, and the first pump, we had a big celebration. And then from there, we had water, so we made more sweaters. Then one woman said, I saw a big machine in Lima. Oh, but it needs electricity. So we went We talked to the mayor and the men, and they started to cut trees, poles, brought in electricity. Guess what? All of a sudden they had a business. They were sending, I didn't have to be involved at all. I mean, they knew where to send these things. So little by little, about a few years ago, I went with my nieces and nephews, and oh my gosh, the village has changed. I left, I did the fourth leave, and it gets better. Guess what? They have a business, they're teaching other women how to do this. So my why is in seeing other people grow, seeing the beauty of the power within each one of us, and to be part of that, to cultivate that power, and to increase it, and then let go, and let the person, grow. And that's what I brought to I call my kids. I love the boys and girls I work with. They make poor decisions, but they're growing from those decisions, and they're finding their power within, and the parents also. So that's my why, and I'm passionate. I'm passionate about what I do. So thank you.
Some of the things that Inez shared with us are things that I have felt. But the word why.
There we are. The word why has fascinated me all my life. And I've asked questions, why am I here? Why am I in this place at this time with this person or with these people? And I think I have thought that this is true of each person. Why has God put us here in this place at this time doing what we're doing? And that's been true from the very first human being until now, and for all human beings in the future. And it's true for all of creation. Each has its purpose. Each one of us has a purpose, a reason for being, who we are, where we are, and how we are. So the mystery word for me is why. There are 4 reasons, pillars, that I chose, but they're not the same ones. Shannon mentioned our charism, which is unifying love. And I added to that the present moment and the dear neighbor and thank you. Those are my pillars that I want to share with you. Unifying love. We were all gifted with a very special gift, unique. Each one of you has a gift that nobody else has, and it's your gift to the universe, your gift to the dear neighbor, your gift to the world. God has given us each a life to live to the fullest. And the only way we can live that life is in this moment. We can't live it in the future. The past is over and done. We live it now. So whatever we do in this moment is the moment that we are to be. It's the moment that we give our whole self. We gift it back to the universe, back to each other. Why? I have a lot of whys in my life. Why did I become a Sister of St. Joseph? Why? Because as Inez said, I went to school with Sisters of St. Joseph from first grade through high school, and then at Mount St. Mary's College. And in high school, when I was with the sisters, they were happy. They were joyful. They cared about each other, and more, they cared about the students. They cared about each one of us. And I thought, it was very attractive to me. I wanted to be a member of their group, not like you, Inez. Sorry. I didn't have to fight too much with God. I had to fight with my parents. Because when I was a sophomore, I told my mom and dad, I want to be a sister of St. Joseph. They said, no, you can't. You have to finish school, you have to get good grades, and you have to work. Oh my gosh. Those were big things when I was a sophomore. So I did what they asked of me, what I knew I needed to do. And when I was a senior, I got my form from the community. I filled it all out. And one night after dinner, I said, Mom and Dad, I need to talk to you. And I took the form and I put it on the kitchen table and I said, would you please sign this? And it was asking to be that I needed permission from my parents because I was not quite 18 to be a sister of St. Joseph. And they read it and they said, of course, it is your life and God is calling you to live this life. And yes, we encourage you to be the best sister of St. Joseph that you can be. That was a real gift. So that was one why. And there every day is a why. And I want to share with you some of the stories of the whys that I have lived. Why do I live my why? Why am I standing next to a particular person in the grocery store? That person. Before, when I was for years, I've stood in line with people at the grocery store. But I'm kind of shy, so I never said anything. But now, I know that person is my dear neighbor. Every person is my dear neighbor. And sometimes I look in the basket and say, oh, do you like that? Is that good? Do you like sushi? I do too. And we start a conversation. And I introduce myself. And the person says their name, and so we start talking. How many people I have met in the grocery store, I don't know them afterward, I probably never meet them again. But I think we all need to be recognized, right? We need that, all of us, each of us. And so that's my way of serving the dear neighbor, of being present to each person I meet. I go up to the cashier. How many people, they just buy their stuff and then off they go. I say, oh, I don't see your name. Oh, it's right here, it's right here. And they pull it out and say, oh, I lost it. It must be back in my cubbyhole or whatever. And so one young woman, cashier in Sprouts, she looked at me and she says, you are very happy today. You're smiling. I said, yes, I am. I just came from this wonderful reading group. And we had a great conversation, and it was really very special to me. And she said, wow. She said, I have not read a book in years. And she said, first thing I do when I get home, I'm going to get a book and begin reading again. Why was I going through Sprouts at that time? And that young woman was the cashier that needed to hear something special. It just opens up a whole new world, a meaning of who is this dear neighbor? What is the present moment? What is unifying love? When I was in Peru, I worked with young students, high school students. They had a group called Estudiantes Juveniles. Heck. And I was in Cosmo for 9 years, so I got to see them go through high school, many of them go through high school and into whatever they were going to do afterward. Not too many jobs available at that time. 35 years later, I never looked at Facebook because it was just overwhelming. And so this one time, I don't know why, I looked at Facebook. Curiosity, maybe. And on Facebook were 4 members of one of the high school groups that I worked with in Peru. And one of them said that one of the boys in the group was going to be ordained a bishop in Peru. And so, of course, I responded. I wrote back. And I said, I was so happy to hear that Jorge Isaguirre was going to be made a bishop. He was just a special young man when I knew him. And he became a priest and became their formation person. He was well looked up to. He established he built a new church in one of the poorest sections of Lima that was for the people, by the people, and with the people. They did it. And so I got in touch with people and I found the money and I paid my plane fare to Peru. And I was there for his ordination. Why? Why did I look at Facebook? We never know. We never know. We see it afterward. I was in Japan for 7 months living with our sisters in Japan because I wanted to know how they lived. What was their culture like? Why were they Sisters of St. Joseph? Why? And I'll tell you 2 stories. One of them sounds kind of mundane, but is it? It was Christmas, it was New Year's Eve, and one of the Japanese sisters had invited me to come down and watch TV because the Japanese celebrate New Year's, but it's very special for them. I mean, they have celebrations that are rituals, not just a big ball falling. They're rituals. It's very spiritual. And so we were sitting watching TV, and it was over, and Teresa said, I hear water running. And I stood up and we went to the door of the sister's room, the living room, and sure enough, there was water running down the hallway. I said, Teresa, get the sisters up, get brooms, because the hall ran kind of downward. And there were rooms on all sides. There was a chapel and the sisters' room where we were. There was a bedroom. I said, get everybody up, get them brooms. And we started sweeping water into the bathroom that was right there. And I looked, thank God for my parents, I learned a little bit of practical plumbing. Why? Because I was in Japan during a flood. So I found out where to turn the water off. We turned it off. In the meantime, water was flooding through this closet, coming down. And the sisters were sweeping and sweeping and sweeping. And finally, one of the sisters had called one of the men at the sisters have a high school, so they called a person who knew about plumbing and that. So we were up 3 hours on New Year's Eve, taking care of sweeping water and drying it up. Why was I there? And then one of the sisters was a volunteer in an assisted living house in Japan. Not just a house, it was a big building with 2,000 people because the government subsidizes assisted living. And they had a tea for some of the people who lived there. They would come down, they would have a tea together, and they would have an entertainment. each Tuesday. And so I went. I went while I was in Tokyo, and I was there. I went about 5 or 6 times. And there was a woman there. She was very special. And I noticed her Satoko san. And I talked with her. I had, Veronica could translate. She could speak a little English, so she translated for me. I said, Satoko, you are just such a very generous woman. How kind you are to the people here. And she said to me, but I'm not a Christian. And I thought, not a Christian. I said, Satoko-san, you don't have to be a Christian because your love is in your heart. And you share that love with your people. And tears running down her eyes and tears running down my eyes. Why was I there? Why was she there? Why was I in Japan? This is close to home. Okay, it's time. You know, there's a lot of women that walk down from the homes that are employees in the houses in Brentwood. And when I'm driving either down or up, I make a point to pick them up and take them to the bus stop or to the house they're working with. And I have heard many stories. Why am I there? So I think that's a question we need to ask each of ourselves in that present moment, the moment I am here for a reason. I'm here at the Mount studying for a reason. I'm here because God has chosen me.
Sister Annette.
It's on. Well, I'm glad you said why as this theme of your life, because one of the quotations that I love so much is the definition of coincidence. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. God works in our lives all the time, and often we don't recognize it. And since people are telling their stories, I will say I was really blessed at a young age to live in a very mixed neighborhood, which was not common in the early 40s and 50s. I'm dating myself. But anyhow, in our neighborhood, we had a Jewish family next to us, a Black family on the other side, a Japanese family at the top of the hill, and these were people that we respected and loved. And it was intriguing to be in such a neighborhood. And I grew up loving people that were different than myself, and I was very curious. I always had a curiosity. And then when I was at elementary school, and this was the 6th grade, this young boy entered our 6th grade, and he was very strange looking to me. He was an American Indian. He was a Hopi, and in the Hopi culture, the men are not allowed to cut their hair until they are a certain age, and so he had this long hair, but it was braided up on the top of the back of his head. And of course I was, kind of startled, but this young man became a friend of mine. And we would walk home from school together, and he would tell me about his life, and it was like entering another world. And one time, this is one thing that I remember, our 6th grade teacher asked each student to write an essay on how they got their name. Well, mine was so mundane, Annette. I happened to get the name because it was one of the names popular when I was born of the Dion quintuplets. I don't know, you probably don't have any idea about that, but it was a big deal. back in the 30s and 40s. And so when Spinning Sun, that was his name, stood up to read his essay, he went on about the Indian culture, and in their culture, the mother, the first thing she saw giving birth would be the name of the child. And he said, he read in his essay, "My mother looked up and saw the sun as if it were spinning." Oh my gosh, how absolutely beautiful. This man was spinning sun, this boy. His parents were dancers in the Hopi tribes, and they would come to various cities, I'd say, and display the Hopi dancing. And of course, they had to put their son in school, and he happened to be in the school I was in. But, you know, to have that exposure to all of these different people in my life, close to me in school, I fell in love with the teachers that taught me in elementary school, and they happened to be Notre Dame of Cleveland sisters. And they had a program where you could enter the religious life right after elementary school. And, oh, I was so excited. This is what I wanted to do. And my parents said, "No way are you going to go into a convent when you haven't even gone to high school." And I was really disappointed. But I think that was a coincidence. That was a blessing, because I ended up at Bishop Conady Memorial High School, which is now Conady, I forget the other name, but two schools amalgamated later. And at that school, there wasn't just one religious community, there were 10 different religious communities. And these religious communities all were very different in dress, different in attitudes, but my very favorites were the Sisters of St. Joseph, who, as both have said, were joyful and happy and liked us. And the other community was the Immaculate Heart of Mary community. And I always thought that they had special gifts because they liked drama and art and speech. And all of those were things that I enjoyed as a high school student. Well, anyhow, when it came time that I graduated from high school, I made the decision to enter the Sisters of St. Joseph. And that has been my life for over 60 years. And it has been blessed. It hasn't always been easy, but I could say that during the time I was a religious, I've always been curious. And curiosity is kind of an important quality for anybody that wants to be a lifelong learner. And in the days that I was growing up, you didn't read the Bible unless you happened to be a Protestant. You know, Catholics did not read the Bible, so I really didn't know what the Bible was about. But in religious life, we had some lessons, and my favorite biblical passage was from, now I'm forgetting the name of the person that said it, but it is, "Act justly, love tenderly, and walk humbly with your God." And I think that has been my calling ever since I found out about the meaning of the Bible, the sacredness of it, etc. And I would say each one of those is a call to me in my life. But particularly, I would say the call to justice. I taught for over 10 years in both elementary and high school. And the last place that I taught, which was a small girls' high school in Fresno, California, it closed. And it was so sad for me because I really love that school. And it was kind of a turning point because I thought, it seems like every school I go to, I get moved. And it's so hard to keep moving from place to place and learning different students and learning different families. And I'd like to kind of stick around in some place. And so there happened to be, this is a coincidence, an advertisement about a ministry in South Central Los Angeles that 2 priests had made a petition to the Diocese of Los Angeles if they could have a teen ministry at Nativity Parish in South Central Los Angeles. And amazingly, the cardinal approved of it, and so they were looking for a woman to be on the team. And I thought, well, I don't really have a job right now. I think I'll apply. So I applied, and lo and behold, I was selected. And I just couldn't believe it. Oh, it was so wonderful. And I went to be a part of this team with 2 priests, and it was a parish that had been mostly Black, but it was beginning to change to be Hispanic. And I had a special love for the Hispanic people. And so I kind of was put in charge of the ministry to them, and I loved it, training them to be lectors, training them to be altar, preparers, and all of this. It was just really wonderful. But I found out that it was very hard to work as a team because it was a new concept and it just didn't work out. And it was much to my pain because I so wanted it to work. But there was one member of the team that I could say was not responsible. And an example of his irresponsibility was his responsibility was to count the collection on Sunday. And, I knew, and I'd go there, and week by week, I would see these envelopes piling up in the back room. And each week, one of the other priests who was on the team would say, now, when are you going to get to those envelopes? And he said, well, I'm getting to it. And then it got to be the week before Christmas. And still the envelopes are piling up. Now they're about that high. And so the other priest said, the people need to have this done because they have to prepare their taxes. And he said, I'm getting to it. And then without consulting us, he went and hired somebody to take care of it instead of, him taking care of it himself, which I thought was not very good. And so anyhow, to make a long story short, the team just didn't work out. And I felt that I had been sucked into this and I wanted to be a part of a team and it just couldn't work out. So I said to the men, I love this parish. I want to stay here. Give me any job you want. I'll do anything. I would like to stay in this parish. And they said, let us think about it. And I go, uh-oh, maybe this was wrong. But anyhow, I came back the next day and they said, we thought about it. And this is a team. And if you don't want to be a member of the team, then you don't have a job. So I went home and I just sobbed. I just felt, oh my gosh, this was just awful. I really thought they would listen to me, but it didn't happen. But this is how that coincidence that I was without a job, then I began to look in the newspaper, the Catholic newspaper, and I saw an advertisement, and the advertisement was written by a layman. And this layman said, sisters should be attorneys. I go, this is the screwiest idea I didn't know anybody. I didn't know an attorney. No sister had ever been an attorney. But he said, send for information. Well, I didn't have a job. So I sent for the information, and this man had put together a wonderful rationale for why sisters should be attorneys. He talked about the great need for poor people to get representation in court, that the court process is so complicated. If people don't have an advocate, they could really get screwed. And it was wonderful because sisters are well educated. They could get through law school. They didn't have to have a particular major. So that was a plus. You didn't have to do extra studying if you tried to get into law school. So it made perfect sense to me that this would be a need, something that I could fill, and it would hit that first part of the scripture passage, act justly. And so I began to ask our community if I could study law. And it took a long time for them to make that decision because it was a first, and it wasn't our ordinary ministry. We were primarily teachers and in the nursing field. And so it took quite a while, and I thought, well, you know, I'm not employed, so I'll just do some steps while I'm waiting for an answer. And I took the exam, and I did score okay. And then I actually began applying to a law school just in case, and I got accepted to 2 of them. And one of them was a 2-year program, which was very appealing to me because I was in my early 40s and I was kind of tired of studying. And I thought if I could do it in 2 years, yippee. Okay, so anyhow, I got the permission, I was accepted, I finished law school, I went to my first assignment in legal aid in Topeka, Kansas, which was wonderful, and then established a law center for the poor in Orange County and worked with the very, very poor, most of whom were undocumented because they could not receive legal services with legal aid because that was written into law when one of the presidents was the president, I believe it was Reagan, that no legal aid service could serve undocumented people. So I had a very good relationship with legal aid. I mainly did family law, rental things where people were getting thrown out of their apartments. Sometimes the apartments were horrible, and immigration and other things. And then that led to an opportunity to work as an administrative law judge for the state of California, which was really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And coincidence, God's way of remaining anonymous in one's life.
Thank you, Sister Annette. Let's hear it for all of our sisters. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think we'll move on. I'm going to turn this over to Brittany, and who's going to give a presentation and on living your why.
If we have the chat, we'll probably try to do our best to get some of those questions to our sisters and maybe send written responses. So for our student leaders, they've heard incredible stories of how, you know, in the discovery of the why, you've had time to reflect and see the impact on legacy of your why. But some of us don't know what our why even is yet. So we have these tough questions on trying to figure out a major at grad school, trying to figure out if we're conflicted between a social work and, you know, a psych program. There's these heavy questions of why that, you know, if we don't know what our purpose is, we don't know what's helping to guide us, it could be very, very difficult. So we're going to do a little bit of a practice to write a why statement. To help you get started, why statements change. We should mention that right off the bat. It's possible that later on, as you reflect and experience, you want to add something. So maybe you realize that in your service day, you left things better than you found them, and you're driven by that, you're passionate about that. Or maybe it's something else. So we do have a lot of resources that we won't have time to share, but we will post. So there is this great book and TED Talk written by Simon Sinek on Start With Why. The name of the TED Talk is How Great Leaders Inspire Action. Has anyone seen it? So for those of us who haven't seen it, we'll show it to you all for today. But what's amazing and impactful about this TED Talk, it's about 18 minutes, is that it's telling you from a commercial standpoint how things operate. So they focus a lot on the how and the what, but the ones who focus on the why and are driven by the why are the ones that thrive and are more successful. But they also have better teams, and those that are a part of their teams are also really, really motivated and driven because they are a part of the squad. And so it's a lot easier to function and thrive in that way. So if we are sharing, we have a reflection sheet that all of the participants have gotten. For those of us who are here today, you have a paragraph on why you should write a why statement. So we'll give you all some time to start writing out your why statement. And the big punchline for Simon Sinek's video is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So you have two handouts. One of them has 3 circles. It's called the golden circle. So the idea is to go out, in. So you're looking first at how. How would you be able to make a difference, leave a legacy, make an impact? And then driving a little bit into that circle, you're going to get to the why. Why through this work? Why are you passionate and motivated for this work? And then if you feel stuck, we're going to have the sisters, if they're willing and able, to walk around and help guide you, ask you questions that you might not be considering, or help feed into, based on their stories, the questions that you're asking. So you want to make sure that at the end of this activity, you have clarity of why. So you have, it's only one sentence. I know that that's really, really difficult. But you have a chance to brainstorm and write everything that comes to your mind. So when you're thinking about that personal mission statement that you've written, the group mission statement that you've written at retreat, and the different statements that you've made after in your courses, you know, feel free to brainstorm whatever process you need. Feel free to do it. You have tables, and you have each other. So we'll give you all some time to work on your why statement. So each of them has to write some sort of screen as well. Can you show part of the picture? Is under Google.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet, they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, And our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. You know, sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right. Because the part of the brain that controls decision making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, you know, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, when you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley.
Can we share them now?
Yeah, let me go ahead and start the class. Why it doesn't start?
So now that we have given some time to watch the video and write some why statements, we're inviting 2 or 3 students to share their why statements. So we will invite them up to share and introduce themselves, starting with. So for those of us watching, we have a group of our, I would say the best, student leaders here today. They are leadership scholars, so they take courses around leadership, they learn leadership theory, they figure out their leadership philosophy, and they are super, super involved in there's a great and varying diversity. So I'm sure and confident that you're going to hear amazing why statements today.
Hello everyone, and for those who watched me, so I should probably share that I'm a graduating senior, so I'll be from May. Yes, so for the long run, I want to run for California State Legislature. Thank you. So,